Hey again, it's Christina from Sunshine and Flora. So we're having kind of a snow day here in Northwest Iowa. We had a big winter storm come through yesterday. There's no school today, although I did take my daughter to daycare this afternoon. But I don't have any appointments photography-wise here at the studio, so I thought that this would be a really good day to go through my dahlia tubers. I want to see how they're doing. I want to start dividing them to get a count of what I have for what I saved from last year. So I thought I would do a video and show you guys what they look like. So I have not opened this tote yet. I do not know what they look like. I checked them maybe a month ago and rehydrated a couple of them. But as far as I know, they're looking really good. So just a little backstory for those of you that are new to my channel and maybe didn't see my previous video. In the fall, I dug up all of my dahlia tubers and I stored them two different ways. I stored some of them in saran wrap, which I know those are doing fine. Those are tucked away and they will be until I'm ready to plant in the spring. A majority of my tubers this year, just because I thought it would be a quicker way to store them, are all stored in this plastic container in pine chips. Now I did moisten the pine chips. I didn't put them in there completely dry. I misted them just so that there was some moisture in here because I didn't want the pine chips to soak any of the moisture out of the tubers. And then probably a month ago I got back in here and checked them, re-misted some of the layers of the pine chips just to kind of keep everything fresh. But I thought today would be a good day to dig in here, see how they're doing. I want to see if some of the eyes are showing up, if I want to go ahead and divide them, and then I will either restore them back in these pine chips or I will wrap them in saran wrap, which I have around here somewhere. So let's open this up and see what they look like. I'm kind of nervous. Now I do also have all of my tubers stored as clumps. Oh my gosh, this looks so good. So what you want to look for when you're checking your tubers, clearly this one is not visibly shrunk, and then I want to squeeze them and they are very firm, they're not squishy. And all of my tubers are stored with these tags. So this one says Caitlin's Joy ? Because I think that's what it is. Oh, those look really good. I'm just going to pull some of the ones out on top here. Okay, this one is showing a little bit signs of shriveling, a couple of them. So one of the tubers is really shriveled. Oh my gosh, I can't talk today. The rest all seem really good. I hope the whole container is like this. So when I stored these, I did them in layers. And so I put a layer of the pine chips down, placed the tuber spaced out, covered them with the pine chips, did another layer. Ooh, this one's really shriveled. This one says Gets Crazy, which wasn't one of my favorites. So if one has to be lost, this would be a good one. One of the other things that I can do right now with some of these tubers that look really shriveled, I don't know that this would last till spring unless I could really rehydrate it. This one looks a little far gone. I could go ahead and put this in potting soil in a container and start growing it right now. I will have to see if there's any, oh, I do see a couple eyes on this one. So I might use this one as an experiment. So I'm going to set this one aside. And then if I start growing them on soon right now under my grow lights, the eyes that are showing will start growing. I can either have those as really early plants in the spring, or I can take cuttings from those tubers, which is something that I did last year. Okay, here's another one. This is Nicholas. Some of these tubers are looking a little mushy. Others are looking okay. All right, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this whole container. I'm going to take all of my tubers out, lay them out, see what they look like, and then we'll go through them and find eyes. I think I'm going to start dividing them and then put them back into storage because I definitely want to make sure they're okay. So I'm just going to set the camera up as I work, and then I will show you guys what these look like after I get everything unpacked. Okay, so here is what I ended up with, and I have them divided into a couple different piles. These are the ones that don't look so hot, but all of these look really good. I'm actually pleasantly surprised because this was the first year that I stored them in pine chips like this. A lot of them are really firm. They look really, really good, almost just like when I put them in. And some of them, honestly, like this is the only one that is really, really shriveled. A couple of these almost look too moist. Like this stem just broke off because it's almost soggy. The tuber itself, I think, is okay. And one of the eyes is actually shooting out a growth, which is kind of crazy. This one is Diva, which is fine because Diva is one I really want. So I think with these that don't look so good, I'm going to save these off to the side and I'm going to pot these up to grow on as early plants or to take cuttings from. And I will do a whole separate video on that because that is one way that you can, first of all, get an earlier dahlia plant and a dahlia bloom. But second, when you take cuttings from your tubers that you grow earlier, that is just another way to increase your stock of dahlia plants. So I'm going to make sure to keep this one labeled. So this pile that doesn't look so good, there's about 6 here. I'm going to set those aside. I will do a separate video on how I root those. But these, I'm just going to start going through and dividing the tubers. So I'm going to first kind of separate these out again on what has really good looking eyes. And then I'll do some close-ups for you guys to show you how I separate these and how you find the eyes and tell the different parts of the dahlia tuber. Because I know it can be a little bit overwhelming at first if you've never done it before. So let me get these sorted and then we'll go through them. All right, so I've got some good samples sorted out for you guys that I can easily show you the different parts of the dahlia tuber, how I divide these, and how I clean these up. And I will also put some close-ups on the screen, but this first one is a really good example. Now this one I have labeled question mark, so I don't even know what variety it is, but this is the clump that I stored, and you can see there's 5 tubers on here. A couple look more shriveled than the others, but right here you can see this swollen spot, and then actually a little growth point. So that's the eye, and it actually is starting to grow, which is kind of crazy because it is only January. So then I would go, what I would do is I would first look to see how many eyes I can find. And the eyes are going to be at the tops of the tubers. So this is your tuber. The next part is the neck of your tuber, and then the eye will be above that. So like this little tuber, the neck, there could be an eye up here. I don't know if every tuber always has an eye. I don't think so. I could be wrong. But to get a plant, you need 1 eye because that'll be 1 growth point. Now you, of course, could plant this whole clump in the ground or this whole clump and maybe you actually have 3 or 4 eyes. Then you're going to just see 3 or 4 growth points coming up. But to get a plant, you only need 1 eye. So that's why we divide our dahlia tubers, because if this has 3 to 4 eyes, you could technically divide this and it would give you 3 to 4 plants. So I'm just going to look on here and I see an eye right here and I see an eye right here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just split this in half because this looks a little shriveled. This looks a little shriveled. This I can tell is the mother tuber. And this looks like a really good tuber. This is a little bit shriveled. This one, let me take the tag off. This one is clearly done, but it also has a broken neck. So anything with a broken neck is not going to grow. So I want to get rid of those too. And like these roots that are just extra on the end, you can get rid of those. Sometimes those will just pull off. And I'm going to get rid of the stem because that's just rotten. So because I see an eye here and I clearly see an eye here because of the growth point, I'm going to cut it right down the middle and I'm going to divide this into 2 different plants, which sometimes it can be a little bit tricky. One more cut. There we go. And then I'm just going to keep this as 2 plants. So my little question mark marker, I'm going to put that on one of them. I'm going to keep these together and then make my pile over there. All right, so let's go on. This one I have labeled as Peaches and Cream, which is a really, really good one. I'm gonna go ahead and zoom the camera in closer, and I'm gonna do the rest of these in really, really close so you guys can see a lot better. Because I know sometimes it's hard to see, and this is something that can get very technical, and I wanna give you guys the best view possible. So let me move the camera. Okay, so this is my peaches and cream clump, and if you look really closely, this one is showing growth points. So there's one there, one here, and if I flip it over, there's even a couple more on the other side. Now, normally, I would want to see if this tuber had a growth point. This is not a very good clump to begin with. I would want to see if this tuber had a growth point, which I do not see that it does, because I would try to split this here. But since I only see some growth points coming around the top, I'm just going to keep this one as it is, and I'm going to store it how it is. Now, if more growth points start to develop really, really close together and it almost becomes this cluster look, that would be a disease and I would throw it away. So in the spring, I'm really going to check this one close, but right now I think it looks okay. All right, next one. This one is black satin. And right away, I'm going to get rid of the stem, get rid of that extra root. These tubers, see how they are all smooth looking? They're nice and firm. You can actually see the original stamp on this one, which clearly tells it's the mother tuber. And if we turn this over, right here at the top of this tuber, that little swelling, that is a clear eye. There's also an eye right here. And there's also an eye right here. So I'm going to try and divide this into 3 different plants. So this is kind of on its own over with these tubers. So I'm going to cut right there. Okay, this one was a broken neck. Okay, so this tuber, even though it looks really tiny, has all the parts. So that can be one plant. Then, let's get rid of that. This is a definite eye. And this is a definite eye. There might be one here. It's kind of hard to tell. This one's really soggy. I want to keep the mother tuber attached to one of these. I'm going to cut it right here. And then I'm going to keep this one together. So this looks really tiny. Oh, I might have just broke that. No, I think it's still pretty firm. So there's an eye here. There might be one there. There's one here and one here. These look really tiny, but they might be okay. So I'm going to put these all together in a pile. Okay, so here's the next one. This also is a question mark. So I'm going to take that label off. The first thing I'm going to do is get rid of these stems. Okay, now this looks like a complete mess. This tuber is way too shriveled, so I want to get rid of that. And then let's just try to pull some of these roots off of here. Okay, now I want to look to see if I see any eyes. This one seems a little bit far gone. Oh, I see a nice eye right here. See how that swelling, it's kind of that bump and then there's that darker dot? That is definitely an eye. I'm going to keep this tuber as it is, and because it's just a little bit shriveled, I'm going to go ahead and pot this up as one of my ones that I see will still grow for cuttings. So I'm going to put that over here. All right, so here's one more example of a tuber that I divided. This is Diva, which was one of my favorites last year. And I divided this into 3 different parts. So this first one is a single tuber. Here is the tuber, here is the neck, and then there is an eye right here. This one, this was the mother tuber because I can see a little bit of a stamping. So I actually have a little miniature tuber that I kept on there, but it looks like there's an eye developing right here. And then I didn't see an eye around the top of this large tuber, so I kept those two connected. And then this one, I am going to cut this one off. So this is a nice tuber in the neck, and there is a really nice eye right here. This tuber, when I cut it, or when I dug it up out of the ground, you can see I sliced the end off. So that most likely will not be a good tuber. So I am gonna remove that because it's probably just gonna rot in the ground anyway. And then I can actually get rid of some of this extra growth here, just for storing it. So then that will be a really nice tuber. So this diva plant, I have 3 out of this one. So all the tubers that I took out of those shavings are either in a pile to pot up right now, or they are in a divided pile to go into storage. I'm gonna let these sit overnight because the cut ends, I just want them to dry over a little bit before I actually store them again. I don't want any enhanced chance of part of it rotting. So I'm gonna let these sit overnight. This video will pick back up tomorrow morning. I wanna show you how I'm gonna be storing these for the remainder of the season. Okay, so it's the next morning. These dahlia tubers have had a chance to sit out overnight, and any of the fresh cuts are nice and dried over, so there should not be a chance for those to get mushy or start rotting on me. So they're the perfect time to get wrapped and put back into storage. Now, I just use the regular old Glad cling wrap. You can get this anywhere. You can even get a generic kind if you want. And I'm just gonna wrap these up, and that's gonna keep them nice and tight until I plant them out in the spring. But the first thing I wanna do before I actually wrap them up is I'm gonna write the name on this painter's tape. You can use masking tape. This is gonna be the label that goes on the outside of the plastic wrap. So the one that I'm gonna wrap is called Ginger Willow. And then I like to put the number of clumps or tubers that I'm wrapping up. So I'm gonna put a number 2 because there's 2 little clumps that I'm gonna wrap in there. So I have this one and this one. And you know, in the spring, when I take these out of the wrap and I get ready to plant them, this one technically has 3 tubers. Yesterday, I only saw 1 eye. If I take this out in the spring and I see more than 1 eye, I can go ahead and divide it again. That's just fine. But I was trying to be just a little bit conservative when I was doing this yesterday. So let me get it started here. I'm gonna wrap these in the same piece of saran wrap because they're the same variety, and that's just gonna help me keep things organized. So I'm gonna put them in, wrap it around real tight. You wanna make sure to get the ends as well. Once that one is all surrounded by the saran wrap, I'm gonna take the second one and put it in there. Wrap it around a few times. Tighten the ends really good. I can throw this tag away. I could wrap this up on the inside too, but since I'm marking it with tape, I don't really need to double label it. And then kind of the end that I ended with, I'm gonna fold that in, and that's usually where I try to put the tape just to hold that down. And that is it. These are gonna go into storage, and that's gonna keep these nice and dry and insulated. Oop, I'm just noticing one little open end here. I need another piece on. That's gonna keep these nice and dry, but it's also it's not gonna dry them out, put it that way. It's gonna keep them really nice until I'm ready to plant them in the spring. All right, let me do another one. This is an easy one. So this one's Caitlin's Joy. It's just 1 tuber. See Joy 1. I will know exactly what that means. And this one I just need a little piece. Spiral it around, wrap the ends. That's it. It's super simple. This is the method I used to store all of my dahlia tubers last year. 95% of them came out fine. I think I only had 2 or 3 tubers rotten out of maybe 70 or so. It worked really, really good. So anyway, I'm going to get all of these wrapped. These are going to go in a cardboard box. I have a few stored with this method already, so these are going to get added to those. They'll be in a cardboard box in my utility room on the cement floor, so it is a cool, dry, and dark area. And then the end of May, beginning of June, I will get these out and plant them in the ground. So I'll make sure to keep you guys updated when I take these out of storage. I'll show you what they look like. And then I also will have a video coming up with some cuttings that I'm doing. Those tubers that I set aside that were too dried out, I'm doing a video to show you my whole process on planting those and taking cuttings to get even more additional plants from dahlias. So stay tuned for all of that. And I still need to share my 2023 garden plan. That'll be coming up soon too. So watch for that. We'll see you soon.